Thank you everyone for coming. I know I would have appreciated it. A lot of things could be said about my dad. He was a lot of things to a lot of people. A husband, a father, a grandfather, an uncle, a neighbor, a friend, an NCO, and to all others, I'd like to think that he was a lovable asshole. Don't lie, let's be honest. But the most important part of who he wasn't in a title. It was in who he was as a person and how he made you feel when he was with you. Because in the end, that's what we remember. Who we are to one another is what gives our lives meaning and purpose. He taught me this without ever even saying the words. He taught all of us a lot of things, mostly because if he had a thought about something, you never had to wonder what it was, which is one of the many traits I inherited from him. He taught me about hard work. He taught me that the only hard work worth doing was what we did for those we loved. For all his imperfections and mistakes along the way, my daddy taught me to love completely, fiercely, and with everything I have, and to never take less love than I deserve. He lived his life that way. Whatever he did it with everything that he had. It's funny that I learned so much about love when he didn't tell me he loved me until I was 17. But it's because he was a man of action. All the days he worked from sunup to sundown, he was saying that he loved us. Every time he told us to put on a damn coat, dry your fucking hair, put on some damn shoes, get a hat on, he was saying that he loved us because he knew that loving someone means taking care of them when they won't or can't take care of themselves. I know that to honor his memory, we'll listen to the best parts of him and remember to love and take care of one another. Being a Marine was an important part of his life. It gave him a family, a place to belong, and taught him how to be a leader. And now anyone else who wants to come up and talk can and say a few words for Sarge.
I've got a few memories to share. My father was a man of many words, but few tenets. One of the main ones while we were growing up was keep it simple. I know some of you might think there's a stupid supposed to follow that, but he never had it when he was talking to us. That's because we never really had the chance or the choice to be stupid with him. Doesn't mean I didn't try. So in keeping with that, I've condensed this down from an hour to 5 minutes. Let's see if I can hit the mark without blubbering too much. When I was a boy, my earliest memories of my dad was walking down the streets of England, holding his hand, looking up to him, following him everywhere, wanting to be just like him. He was my favorite person. My father was an immeasurable mountain of a man. A hard man, born in hard times, in a hard world which has long since faded from the memories of many. In the Marines, his hard mind found purpose. They defined him. In time, his example, like so many examples before and since, came to define the Marines. Through the turbulent 60s and 70s, he walked the straight and narrow, leading by example. In all of this, he never sought to be the hero. He only saw a job which had to be done, and he made it his mission to make sure his men came home. Yet one thing, and most of them followed him home. Yet one thing remained: he wanted to be a father. Always said that. That's the only thing he wanted. Through trial and error, eventually he found Mom. Or more, she found him and held him down. And my sisters and I followed. He once told me he didn't like repeating himself. So when he told you he loved you, it was real. And when he said he was proud, it was true. He was a sophisticated hillbilly who knew how to party, and when given the choice, he chose family every time. Maybe not in the best way, but it was still on his mind. He sacrificed his vices, smoking, drinking, for more time. Money was nice, but time was a treasure. He was irreplaceable. All he really wanted was good conversation, and he got it from everyone. And I know he was highly favored because God took his time in taking him home. I remember him telling me the night before I shipped off for the Army, sitting in his workshop, surrounded by his tools: courage, sacrifice, honor. These are the tenets a man must live by. Stick to them and you'll be fine. Have the courage to stand for what is right, even if you stand alone. Be prepared for the sacrifices you will make for those that matter, and know the honor of the sacrifice. Don't be a hero, just a man. It was a hard ask, but the best answer. And though we may not have always seen eye to eye, we met hand in hand once more towards the end. My dad, the one I look up to still, and one day hope to follow. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to say anything before I read this? Karen, it's me. Come ahead.
See me.
I'll pull it down, son, so you can be sure.
You might not be able to see me, but you can hear me. Anyway, I got to put on my glasses here. Anyway, what would you think of someone who would come 17 hours to farm country of northern New York and take the entire family out to see an Engelbert Humperdinck concert? Oh, Engelbert who? Yep, that's what I thought too. I didn't care. I was going to a concert, my very first concert. Oh, he was very suave. Engelbert, not Bud. And that was pretty much the first time I met Bud Leonard. Wayne. Now, I don't have the best of recollections, but some memories do stick out, and that one did. He took our whole family up to the concert to see him, all because our mom loved Engelbert Humperdinck songs. and he had an amazing voice. A side note, if you've never heard of him, he's a British pop singer who has been described as one of the finest middle-of-the-road balladeers around. And he's still around. Look him up if you want. But I, as a young, naive teenager myself, I thought, wow, this guy Bud must be super rich. And I had never met anyone from the South with an accent and with a name like that, Bud. Weird. I learned later that was typical Bud to generously and lavishly go all out like that, sometimes at the expense of something else in need of repair, but I won't go into that, right, Karen? And we all know Bud is not always known for his, let's just say, gentle diplomatic tactics, however much of a truth teller he might be, even towards me. One time, I came down for a visit, and he looked up from his favorite TV viewing chair and said, "Hey, Wendy, you're getting fat." Inwardly, I was quite shocked, but it might have been true, and compared to him, I was. So I said, "Yes, Bud, I'm fat." He's certainly a truth teller, whether you want to hear it or not, and however bluntly it may come out. It takes a lot to convince my mom. She's Irish and proud. I shouldn't have to say any more for you Irish folk. And I don't know what Bud said to her, but he must have given her some good, smooth sales talking, because my parents relented / allowed me, who had never been anywhere, to go stay with Karen and Bud for several weeks in Beaufort, South Carolina. But of course, that left my parents, my older sister, and my younger sister Sharon to care for over 100 dairy goats on the farm, which is a tremendous workload to leave behind, and I did feel a little guilty. Anyway, Karen was pregnant with Christina Michelle, glowing, looking so beautiful, and I'll never forget being able to spend that precious, wonderful time together. And it was all because of Bud. It wouldn't have happened if he hadn't cared, and he did. And yet he put up with us two young gals. At that time, anyway, we were young. I will always be thankful to him for that time we had together. To those of you, he may have come across crusty. Sure, some of you might compare him to a loaf of sourdough bread, crusty on the outside, a bit slightly bitter in taste, and perhaps not to everyone's taste. But although it's a bit crusty, it's soft on the inside and loved by many people. But you know what? I just realized I don't really like sourdough bread. But I am very fond of Bud, and you know what? I will miss him, and, you know, thank you for giving me this time up here.
Anyone else? Karen asked me to read this. Last words by Sarge's wife. Thank you all for your love and your kind words. These words may be hard for some to hear, depending on your personal beliefs. So whatever that you may be, if you find them offensive or believe them to be untrue, to where they shake your shoes enough for you to kindly walk away, turn away, I ask you to do so quietly. I believe in Jesus Christ. Before my husband and I were married, I asked what his belief was, and he told me he was a Jew. I was naive enough to think Jesus was a Jew, we'll be fine. So we got married. Then I realized he never went to synagogue or even church anywhere. He kind of laughed about that, then said he was actually raised a Baptist, and proceeded to tell me all about the Mason-Dixon line, which led to other subjects of distraction completely off the original one. What I finally got out of him over months of separate conversations was that he believed in a supreme being, but not a man that would kill his only son for the sake of others. My comment back to him was, it wasn't a man, it was God. A moment of frustration silenced him. A few last words. Many times I tried to understand the intense anger that would surface periodically onto me and then our kids. I read somewhat insignificant Vietnam sugar-coated book that barely told any truth as to why the war happened and how much blood and guts were being spilled over there. As an American, we were being told lies. Sarge and his Marines fought and lived the real event. All but one of his Marines survived. He often had the ideal that no Jesus would save a man who killed people like he done. I had a chance to tell him God chose many men to kill others in war. It was often killed or be killed, not a chosen platform. If he condemned himself from the love of Jesus, what did that mean for his Marine brothers? God is the one who judges the innocent and the unrepentant. That's all there is. My second last word. Yet when he and others returned home to America, he was spit upon and called horrific names. That explained much of the anger, a fierce resolve to serve and protect that result in unrequited integrity. I could only tell him he had much in common with someone else I'd heard about. Jesus was also spat upon and persecuted. A third moment of frustration contemplating for him. Sarge took his responsibilities very seriously, and I'm sure his Marines can agree, as I can, as can his children and grandchildren, as can many friends, neighbors, and acquaintances. Everything he did or meant to do came with either a smile or an angry exchange, and was meant for the better of those around him. This man didn't believe he was a child of God for a long time, but when Jake passed, I let him know, because more than one of us in this house believes he is sanctified, which means he has been set apart for God. The Bible says Jesus will intercede and God will see only the good. Sarge had much good. So I lay my dear friend in love at Jesus' feet.